You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Hey everybody, welcome to Music Tectonics. I'm your irregular host for this episode, Tristan Neer-Jaeger, Chief Strategy Officer at Rock Paper Scissors, the PR firm that specializes in music innovation and music technology. This week, I got to talk to some very interesting people who will be leading conversations at the Music Tectonics conference this October, as well as some of our past winners from our annual Swimming with Narwhals startup competition. First, I talked to Con Rasso of Tuned Global, who told me all about how AI can be used to power experiences, not just crank out content. He also talked about how apps are going local, much like hit songs, as glocalization shifts the music business. Then you'll hear some choice moments from our recent seismic event to kick off Swimming with Narwhals. Hear meaningful advice from some of our past winners on the challenges facing founders and how to make the most of events like Music Tectonics. Last, but most definitely not least, I got a chance to chat with Tracy and Robbie DeBarros, the dynamic duo leading Revohloo, a new music meets video app. These bold innovators and artist champions shared their thoughts on creators, new monetization approaches, and community in music. And when it comes to narwhals, just a quick reminder, competition applications are open right now, so dive on in, future narwhals. We'd love to swim with you. Hey everyone, Tristan Neer-Jaeger here from Rock Paper Scissors with Con Rasso of Tuned Global. How are you doing, Con?
Hey Tristan, great, thanks. Doing well over this side of the world.
Yeah. You're on the nice chilly side of the world at the moment, and we are in the hot steamy side. So, little bit of envy on my part, I have to admit. So, I wanted to bring you. I know you have been thinking a lot, like a lot of people in the music business, about AI, which is obviously, speaking of hot and steamy, is a hot topic. And there's a lot of talk and concern about AI, especially when it comes to AI-generated content, what it means. Is it art? Is it music? Is it human? All those things. But in some ways, the excitement around generative AI has masked some of the more important roles that AI might play in the music industry. And I know that you and some of your colleagues at Tune Global have been thinking a lot about AI-driven features and experiences and how those might change how we enjoy music. So I wanted to hear how you're thinking about AI less as a less in its generative role and more in its other potential roles that could really do some great things for musical experiences.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tristra. It's a really interesting topic, and like you said, it's a little polarizing at the moment because the generative thing sort of swamps a little bit of everything else. But I think from our side, it's all around how you can provide a better end user experience. And what we found, even in these early stages with us experimenting with AI, is that things that we expected to take 6 or 12 months, we're starting to produce MVPs of those in 4 weeks. And so what it's doing is really compressing our ability to innovate. And real examples there are some are really interesting and simple, and maybe I'll unpack a couple of things just from our experience and comment on where I think some of these things are potentially going to go. I mean, from our experience, obviously everyone's talking about ChatGPT. So our first experience was to go to ChatGPT and start to actually look at asking ChatGPT some things about music, some things about me, and what it could actually create as interesting playlists or assistance to curation or things like that. And the results were pretty good. But on its own, ChatGPT couldn't do a whole lot, right? Because it doesn't really know what rights, where are you in the world, all these other aspects. So we've been on our side thinking, okay, let's get something that we can actually start to beta test in the market. And how can you actually now start to allow initially curators and then users to start to use the functionality of things like ChatGPT as a bit of an experimental phase? And we're doing that right now. We're rolling out betas right now about people able to use ChatGPT in our content management systems to actually create specific type of playlists.
Can you walk me through exactly how that works? So if I'm a curator or if I'm working behind the scenes, what is it? How does that actually work? What's the workflow like?
Yeah, you can actually start. You can go into an existing playlist on our CMS, or you can go into you create a new playlist, and you'll get a little AI assistant, and you can just type in like you would normally type into a Chat GBT prompt, and you can actually follow a chat and say, for argument's sake, we've been using, I'm a I'm in the US. I'm a male, 23-year-old. It's a sunny afternoon and I want a playlist for driving my car fast.
A
And
pretty common use
and
case, yeah.
it produced, yeah, exactly. And then we altered that and said, okay, I'm a female, 32 years old, doing a high aerobic workout, right? And so different industries and different ideas. And each time it produces a pretty reasonable set of results, right, for that. And so, and what we do, the magic of that on our end is we mix that data with our own data to actually understand what do you have rights to based on the catalog you have licensed, publishing rights, everything else that might be part of that, that people don't often consider. And so you're actually able to literally, in the case of what may have taken you, from our experience, especially in the fitness industry, somewhere between 10 and 15 hours to curate, you can actually get something that now you've produced in maybe 5 minutes through some prompts, right? So it's amazing, right? And the beauty of this, from my perspective, is if we flip it now to the person who's the owner of the service, we give them so much opportunity to experiment with different types of playlists that can actually be targeting different groups. And they don't have to invest the 15 hours. They can invest the 5-10 minutes and actually iterate on that. And I think that's where the value is, to when you really start to flip it and say, rather than, oh, AI has taken over the world in some ways, how do I actually use this really powerfully for myself in that regard?
Yeah, I also want to make sure we talk for a minute about something I know that Tune Global's been up to as well with your acquisition of Pacemaker. And I'm wondering how these, people refer to them as AI DJ tools. And, nowadays anyone, DJs can run the gamut from people who make their own music to people who, are selecting music for an audience or something like that. So can you tell me a bit about what those tools do and how you see them evolving? Because I can imagine that same swift progress is happening in that realm as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, appreciate you asking that. And I don't want to make it all about Tune Global, but that's a really interesting piece about Pacemaker. And so their technology has a has a lot of depth to it, and we're working through various things that aren't necessarily the agenda of this podcast, which include radio and a whole lot of other items. But at its simplest level, it actually uses AI to do real-time analysis of audio as it's mixing between audio tracks, and actually does voice matching, beat matching, key matching, and actually creates a really custom way that these two tracks transition into each other, which which is truly amazing when you see it and you hear it and you go, wow, that's just fantastic. So now when you match those two items together that I was talking about earlier, about automatically creating a playlist and now just allowing AI to create this mix over the top of it, what are the impacts here for people who are creating playlists, for people maybe who are in the BGM space and want to create a really seamless background music experience for their audience? There's so many executions on that. And what we're doing with Pacemaker is we're not limiting it just to the people who traditionally would use our infrastructure and platform. We're actually creating it into small libraries that can be used in other applications. And so really any service around the world will be able to implement Pacemaker technology within their own applications and create a better user experience. So for us, it really aligned, because the alignment for us always is, how much does someone actually use the services of our clients? And I think the real test of that is just how often they listen to songs or podcasts or audiobooks or whatever else we might be offering. And so Pacemaker definitely on that side. The other bit, which is AI based as well, and I'll only touch on, and it's probably a topic for another time, is still going on engagement. And I think AI really is around engagement, right? How do you actually improve engagement for people, whether that is suggesting better audio tracks, whether it is other aspects of that. We actually are rolling out some other pacemaker technology, which is the ability to actually broadcast for any user to broadcast live radio.
Wow.
And when you think about that as a social tool, you almost start to think of it as a UGC aspect of radio. And how do people now actually put their own personalities across the top of this? And there's a whole lot of other technology and AI technology used in that. But again, really exciting. Those guys did a tremendous job in the development, and we're working, with that team to sort of further that.
That's fantastic. Thanks for explaining all of that, Con. I want to switch gears a little bit, though it's sort of a related topic. I mean, engagement may be the leitmotif that runs through all of this, but there's been a bit of talk lately, thanks to in part to a report from Will Page about glocalization, which is a word that I personally don't like. It sounds like something that's very unpleasant that happens to you, to medically, or maybe when you get a cold, you glocalize. However, it is a helpful term. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it basically means that all around the world, different markets are finding more and more interest and engagement with local content, for lack of a better word. So if you look at the charts around the world in countries like Germany, who were once pretty much in sync with the US, Britain, you're starting to see a divergence. Now, there's always been some markets that have always done their own thing, such as Japan and to some extent in India, but we're really seeing a lot more pockets of local culture catching on with local listeners, which is pretty exciting. So I'm curious, though, so how do we think about this, not only in terms of tracks or of content, but also in services and experiences? So what does glocalization mean for experiences? I mean, I thought of this question, Con, because Tune Global has been doing some really interesting work in very small markets that are probably not well served by some of the bigger international streaming services, for example, just because their artists will be buried in the massive catalog that comes from everywhere else. So you work with a company called M Jams in some Pacific Islands, and you just announced a deal with Tussauds in Greenland that is very much focused on local music and on contributing to highlighting, nourishing a very vibrant local scene that's been very scattered in the digital realm. So all that to ask you, how do you see glocalization affecting music services and products, and what is the experience side of this equation?
Yeah, no, I think certainly from, I'm going to say, our client's point of view, which is the company that's providing the service often within a local market or a focus on a local market, they're often about two things. I think they're definitely about reaching their customers more relevantly, and that could be content and user experience, and we'll talk about both those items. But they're also, I believe, really engaged in how they further their own culture. So, how do they give opportunities to artists? How do they allow, and we talk about content, but it's really the user experience about how does that content surface? So when we look at the large streaming providers, I would say that in a lot of cases, they do have content of these smaller markets, maybe not the real niche content, but they have broad content. But it's so swamped by the Western experience that it becomes difficult to find this content and really focus on this content and champion these artists. And I think, that's certainly a theme that we're seeing around the world. The Pacific Islands, for argument's sake, you mentioned MJAMs, and they absolutely are passionate about how they allow local artists a bigger opportunity to actually monetize and to expose their works to local people. Now, in terms of product, what does it mean? It's a really interesting question because, for argument's sake, we have also recently launched a service in Egypt with a major telco there, Etisalat. And in Egypt and working with the Arabic language, there's a lot of nuances that happen within the Arabic language, not only in how people search, but what they search. So we had to ensure that our system was wide enough. So really unusual ways that people might search for artists. And remember, these areas are not metadata rich areas. I can't just go get a metadata provider and say, I'll plug you in and use you in this way. You have to provide a much more diverse range of services for these guys.
In this particular case, and I'm sure there are other cases, is it that people are using cultural references that are very familiar locally, but wouldn't be familiar much outside of Egypt or the Middle East, North Africa? So like say, oh, the guy, the singer from the film with the bird, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Like, and if you search for it, it should pull up this one guy and this one track, but that doesn't necessarily happen if you are a programmer from Denmark, right? And trying to figure this out.
That's certainly part of it. It's also, I guess, the colloquialisms and
Got it.
slang, if you like, that those artists are named as. That may take you to a different area, you say in Thailand, which technically is such a difficult language because there is no spaces between words; they're inferred. So how do you actually know when someone's searching? So these are really complex problems, but it's our role to say, how does someone actually get to there? But they're the technical issues to it. I think from the actual product side, it is a focus on how, one of our questions that we ask people all the time is, what's the center of your world? And I think that's really relevant in a cultural sense and a globalization sense because it varies from location to location. We all know that, I think we all know that in India, people don't search for artists, they search for actors, right? And actresses. And so, what happens in that circumstance when people are actually culturally different in terms of what they're providing in those services? We also provide really interesting in some unusual locations, whether it's the US or in Africa, services that are faith-based services in those markets, which is really, really interesting because in some cases they want to keep these things really separate between popular music and faith. And in other places they don't. They really want to mix those together. So the nuance of what you're doing makes it really important that you can think flexibly. And I think that's the first one. I think you can always act flexibly, but you have to make sure that you're able to sort of take an open view and say, okay, I didn't really understand that. How do we actually now put that in place for that particular market, grow in that market? And I will touch on the content side for just a sec. We recently did ourselves an announcement of the ability to mint royalties on Web3 with Revohloo. And why we were so excited about that is it actually gave our clients an opportunity now to have a platform in place in local markets where there was a totally different way for artists to monetize. They could monetize traditionally, or on a user-centric model, whether it's pool-based or user-centric based. But they could also now start to think, do I need to fragment my rights because I've actually got some sort of real need financially right now, not in the future? And so that's really been interesting as well in doing that. And I would say very experimental in the first rollout of a few markets, and we're looking forward to the next 6 months in that progress.
Speaking of which, I think you're touching on that thing that we were all excited about last year, Web3. And I know that Toon Global was really trying to get ahead of the curve a bit and provide some pretty interesting services for for that whole blob of stuff we call Web3. However, this year is like feeling a little chillier. There's some snow on the ground, but where do you see some little sprouts coming up? Where are there still some promising sides of this technology that you think could really bear some fruit for music?
It's like a glass of water, isn't it? We've filled the glass with AI, and Web3's just had to get into that
Oh,
glass at the
it's
moment, right?
splashed out on the table all over the place. Yeah.
Exactly. Will it make its way back in? You know, I definitely think that I don't think it's bad what's happening with Web3. We're seeing an opportunity where people look at it more realistically. I guess some of the early profit takers are not in that market any longer, and we can look at I guess, the core ability of the technology. Uh, I I would agree with you, Trista, in terms of just commentary overall on the industry. I think people are much cooler this year to Web3. Having said that, we're in a really unique position often as Tune Global that we get so many people coming to us weekly with their ideas and understanding how they might be able to use our technology to execute those ideas. And it is really a privileged position because we're able to see some of this awesome technology, whether it's Web3, whether it's AI, whether it's medtech, and go, wow, that's just amazing. I can tell you, I can absolutely tell you that with our team, I say, is there any other time that's better to live than right now? I just think it's absolutely exciting. But going back to Web3, I definitely think that Web3, from our perspective, we still believe we're strong believers in where that industry is going to go. We think, the economic tides at the moment sort of are working towards businesses that can prove more profitability just because of the economic conditions. But that will switch around and people will start to look at where the
Hmm.
opportunities exist as well. I think Web3 still offers a lot. From our own perspective, definitely the items that we're doing with Revelator, which is not a traditional NFT, as I mentioned earlier. It actually is a minting of royalties, but then those products come in through a normal supply chain, which is a really different way to do it, and that we've worked together with Revelator on. But on our metaverse strategy, we've just actually completed a skinnable land in both Roblox and Decentraland. And we've been talking to many companies, which are both companies that have streaming services, and they just want to experiment. What happens in an area like Roblox? Can we actually run maybe live events? Can we do some games in there and do some things that are interesting that add to the Web2 experience? But also brands. And I would say there's still a really interesting and tangible thirst for brands to experiment in this space. And where we think that's at the moment and is we've got it available now. It can be reskinned really economically and add music and a whole lot of other media features to those worlds. There's games on there. You can actually throw yourselves at different boards and see how you score and go up to spaceships and do all this fancy and
Yeah.
fun stuff. But it's still where we were at, I think, when we talked almost 12 months ago, that you need to experiment. And if you can experiment, you're going to find the nuggets on how you can engage with this audience and then grow this audience. We know the demographics of something like Roblox is quickly changing from a very youthful audience to starting to actually become a slightly older audience, so much more attractive to marketers. And so I think, you want to be aware of that and say, so what am I doing in this space that I know whether my users love this or hate this?
That's great. I love that you've built sort of a laboratory, a white label laboratory for people to play around with these
Mm.
things. Well, I can't wait to talk more with you and your colleagues from Tune Global and everyone else at Music Tectonics. Thanks for taking the time to get us warmed up and excited for what's to come.
Thanks, Risto. Great to share.
Now let's drop into our seismic activity event for startups. You'll hear a few words of advice and some thoughts on the Swimming with Narwhals pitch competition from experienced founders. The first guest is Jessica Powell, founder of AudioShake. Then you'll hear Zan Schwinn of BIA, followed by Jaquel Horton of Fave. This is just a taste of my conversations with these past Narwhal winners. Find a video of the whole event on Music Tectonics' YouTube channel for more insights and more details on the Swimming with Narwhals competition. That's great. So let's talk for a second about your story, or AudioShake's story. As you know, you won the Narwhal competition. I'm curious what the experience was like during the competition, and then what kind of business do you feel like that the whole competition process helped you do at Music Tectonics?
So I would say, we were going to go to Tectonics anyway. I'd heard really good things about the conference. I also am a sucker for the beach. So I feel like I'd already heard good things, but I was also like, and it's at the beach. And I'm in San Francisco and it's cold and foggy all the time. So it just seemed like the perfect place, to go. And I already knew some startups that were going. So it all just kind of seemed like a natural place to be. It was a super easy process, and very friendly. And, when we got there, again, very, very straightforward. You just got up, you did your thing. I actually thought it was great compared to some other ones I've done. Like we did South by Southwest, and they have this buzzer, and you would just see like team after team, literally 3 words from their ending, just get just kind of brutally cut off. And I understand it when you have like huge, like time constraints and tons of teams pitching, but I just felt like it was a much friendlier, like low key kind of thing. Which is not to say that you can go over, but like no one's going to cut you off in those, like when you have a sentence left. I also thought it was really useful, like being up on stage, right? When we started, we were all coming from tech, not from the music industry. We didn't know many people in music at all. And so being able to get in front of a bunch of music people, is really valuable, right? Being able to describe, like your product and everything. And then people come up to you afterwards. And I think that, I stayed in touch with some of the startups that were part of my cohort, and they all felt very similar. Like it was actually really positive for them to be able to get up and pitch and then have people come afterwards. So all in all, it was a really great experience. And I really loved also that it was a mix of startups and, like DSPs and other kinds of companies.
I would love to now bring on Zan Schwinn of BIA. Zan is a full stack strategist, which sounds, I love that. That sounds amazing. A seasoned entrepreneur, and is currently co-founder and CEO of BIA, the world's first platform making singing for health accessible to the masses, which as a singer is super close to my heart. And I love it. I love singing for health. It is indeed like great exercise and great for your heart and soul. So excited to talk to you some more, Zan. So how was the overall conference impacted where BIA ended up?
Well, I think connecting to the industry, especially since Narwhals is one of these, you're 1 degree of separation from literally everyone in the industry, that being that niche can have ripple effects that go on for years and years and years. I mean, I just think the community aspect in and of itself, allowing yourself to be able to socialize with other startup founders within the music industry, just as an experience itself is great. I think being able to pitch in an environment that's friendly rather than, really, really intense, but still has that structure where you can grow and you can learn is important. And then obviously winning like press is always helpful for all things. So
we like to think so, but it's great to hear that from you too. All right, we got in one last minute. Is there any general piece of advice that you would love to share with other founders or people who were when you first jumped into the Swimming with Narwhals pool? Any little bit of wisdom, small tip, ideas that you want to share?
Yeah, I think, as it was kind of mentioned in the first conversation, pitching to angels and VCs for funding as a music tech company can inherently have its own blockers. There are red flags around licensing and all of these different areas. And I think that there are giants that have come before us as startup founders. Startup is no longer new. And so I encourage you to reach out to other people within the industry, asking them about how they overcome some of those questions that happen, not just in funding conversations, but in partnership conversations, because I know that it can be a little bit trickier to be a music tech founder it's hard enough being a founder in and of itself, but within this space, I would lean on your community. I would use this as an opportunity to connect with other founders, go for coffee, talk about the challenges that you've had and learn from each other. Because for me, that's been the most helpful part of my journey as a startup founder within this space. And I think that this community is a really great place to build that for yourself and an opportunity for you to find those connections.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Next, we're going to talk to Jaquel Horton. She is the founder of Fave, as I just mentioned. And Fave is a platform dedicated to empowering superfans with partnerships and investments across the biggest entertainment companies and artists in the world. I was wondering if you could share some of your experiences as pitching. I mean, as I mentioned when I introduced you, this was one of the first sort of public reveals of the platform. How did that feel? What kind, how did the feedback help you or not? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pivotal moment, this pitch competition, because it was, as we said, the first time where I talked about choir at that time, it was called. And I mean, I didn't even want to at first. It was like, wait, I don't know if I should do this. Like, it's not ready yet, and got the encouragement to do it. Came on, I guess, a virtual stage, as we've all related to, poured my heart out. And the feedback from the chat was things that I still remember today, seeing something pop up and how people were interpreting what I was saying and putting it in not my like storytelling mode, which I was doing for the pitch, but hearing how they interpret it as business opportunities, deals they wanted to strike. All of this was super helpful. And to hone in on who was saying that and why they were saying it. And I really took the comments as like strategy to understand how people would interpret the concept. The people who I met in doing that, obviously following up with those people, some of those people are in the chat now, right? Kelly is here, even Dimitri, even the judges, right? Like still talk to them almost daily, right? They're still deep in the strategy of Fave, met through this competition. And I think it was just one of those times where you have, as a founder, this belief that the world should be a certain way. You are confused why the world isn't that way, and you want to translate that, right? And so you, again, kind of pour your heart out into this, but to see people's reaction and interpretation of it was super rewarding. And I would say that was the coolest thing to come of it, outside of all of the connections made, right?
I love that you dived in just a second before you thought you were ready.
I wouldn't have
standing at the edge of the pool, is going to be cold.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I'm a sole founder, but I was the only person working on Fave. I think a few weeks later, I said, okay, I think this is going somewhere. Maybe I need to have somebody. It was a vision, right? That was materializing, where I was trying to find some developer to like build it out. But if I didn't get that encouragement, it would have probably still been in my back pocket as some idea to do one day. But because it came here and made it real for me, it set everything off without question.
Amazing. So any advice for folks, especially people who may be at that, I may be just a touch too early phase, how to approach jumping into a pitch competition like this? What would you have told yourself back then?
Yeah, I mean, what you get intimidated by at that stage is thinking that nothing is ready. I'm sure every founder 5 years in, no one thinks they're ready, right? It's always, let me just wait for this next deal. Let me just wait for so you will never feel ready. And especially at the point where, let's say some founders may not even have an incorporation, right? Or they haven't talked to anybody else about it, or et cetera, et cetera. The best thing you can do is use this as feedback, user research, a panel, and get the way that you're telling the story as this kind of muscle that you build, right? Again, get the feedback and hear what people are hearing when you think you know it. Again, this is obvious to you, but if it's not obvious to others, you get that practice. And just start, right? And just see how you feel when you say it. It is a muscle that you have to build. So I very much agree, just try to do it as much as possible. But there's no right moment or gut feeling or anything. This is the time. You have to just be opportunistic with these kinds of things. And you will, even if you feel the pitch itself didn't go well, or you don't win the competition or whatever, the experience and the people that you meet along the way are well worth every second of it. So don't hesitate if you are. This is very worth it.
Is your startup a narwhal? Applications are now open for Music Tectonic's Swimming with Narwhals Startup Pitch Competition. Apply at musictectonics.com by August 8th, 2023. That's also where you'll find eligibility requirements, a timeline, and some helpful FAQs. Forget unicorns and shark tanks, apply to Swimming with Narwhals, and join Music Tectonic's community of music innovators. You could be one of 4 finalists in the spotlight at Music Tectonic's 5th annual conference, October 24th through 26th in Santa Monica, California. It's the place to be for music innovation startups, whether or not you reach the finals. We'll have a Startup Carousel Demo Day on the Santa Monica Pier, panels and networking with everyone you need to meet, from investors to labels, and a very special startup bootcamp at the Universal Music Group offices. Come swim with the narwhals. Apply at musictectonics.com, get your conference badge, and meet us in California.
Hey everybody, this is Tristra New Year Yeager of Rock, Paper, Scissors, and I am here today talking to Tracy and Robbie DeBarros. Tracy is the CEO and Robbie is the COO of a brand new video app called Revohloo. So thanks so much for talking to me today, Tracy and Robbie.
Thank you, Trisha. Thank you
for having me.
Awesome. So first of all, since you guys are new to the scene, I would love if you could tell everyone in 1 minute, if you can, what is Revohloo?
Sure, I'll take that one. It's the revolution of music video entertainment. I know that's a lot soundbitey, but it really is revolutionary, and that's where we got our name from, Revohloo. It's a derivative of that. So we've created a way to create a whole new music video product, a whole new way to enjoy music video, engage with music video, a whole new way for artists and rights holders to monetize the music video and fans to engage with it. And it allows, so basically a music video is broken down into 4 sections, and you can have, there's four versions of each section, so that's 4 to the 4th power, and you can remix, create, and share 256 versions of one video in a nutshell.
That sounds extremely fun. So
Yes.
let's talk a little bit about engagement, because it sounds like Revohloo is really built for people to do cool stuff and engage with content in a new and creative way, which is very much on trend. That's very much what people are wanting to do with music nowadays. A lot of fans don't want to just listen passively. They want to get involved and remix and play around with things. So if people aren't experts in video editing or in making music, they need some guidelines, right? Like they want to get started. They want to do something that's fun, that's just creative enough so it feels like they've done something and they've heard or seen things in a new light. But it can't be so open-ended that they don't know how to start. I mean, that's always been a big problem with music and music creation, is the sort of cold start problem. You don't know how to get going. It's very complicated. So how, as you were thinking about Revohloo and thinking in general, like this would be really cool, how did you solve that problem and find that golden mean between guiding users and letting them cut loose and do fun, creative stuff?
We like to talk about viewers.
Sure.
And viewer experiences and things like that. But yes, I think our app from a viewer experience is very easy to use. It's very friendly. It's remix, create. That's the easy part. I think from creating a Revohloo experience, we've worked hard to make that process. We're constantly refining it. We recently we're adding some AI technology to Revohloo as well. That's really going to lower the barrier to creating a Revohloo. Because right now, when you create a Revohloo, so when an artist creates a music video, so let's talk a major artist. They're doing 5 hours to 8 hours of footage, and this has been told me by my professional music video directors and so forth and so on. So even at 5 hours, you're looking at 300 minutes. The average music video is 3 minutes these days. Some are less. The hip hop videos are 2 minutes and change. So you're only getting to use 1% of that content. So this, 99% of your content goes unused. That's a lot of content that goes to waste. So when those artists can repurpose that content and create, multiple versions of their video, but that's a labor-intensive process. It's not so bad. It's not so bad. Let me get that wrong. It's more labor-intensive than the new version that we're willing to offer people now. The original version is great because it adds much more. You can do so much more with it, right? But we've lowered the barrier to where a kid who doesn't, a girl who's playing the guitar and she's singing and she wants to make a music video, but she doesn't have maybe, $500 or $1,000 to make a music video. We've made it so that for $29 she can create a music video with Revohloo that's totally engaging, and not a music video. She can create a Revohloo music video that has 256 versions to it, and still put that on YouTube, and then also monetize that on Revohloo and get some of that money back. So that's interesting. So we've really lowered that barrier to really speak into what you were talking about as far as ease of use.
Cool. So, but viewers, from their experience, it's pretty much seamless, and they can just play around with the parts, and it doesn't feel it's pretty easy to figure out.
Oh yeah, there are two buttons on the UI. One says remix and one says create.
Awesome. I think the 2-button solution is something that a lot of creative apps could employ. That's pretty amazing. So, when we spoke earlier, Tracy, you talked to me a little bit about the way you were seeing things going in the music industry, and that you saw some real potential in ads in new places. And for instance, Spotify had their Stream On event earlier this year, and they sort of emphasized their video or repivot to video. I think they've pivoted to video like 3 or 4 times. But there was a lot of room in there, and was kind of unspoken, for advertising. So clearly this is on a lot of people's minds. How do you see ads and the music business? How could they work together beneficially to sort of help people on all sides, instead of, for example, becoming a nuisance or a detriment to user experience?
Right. So I think that, first of all, when you talk about advertisers, right, that's how we're an ad supported service, right? So we really want to create a value proposition to them that is something that they haven't seen before, right? And something that creates a lot of value. And we've checked the boxes. We've done it. With a Revohloo music video, one brand can have 4 unique ads that create 256 versions of a music video, and every person who creates that one of those versions is going to see the ad every time. So we've kind of taken the approach where we can doing direct deals, but not just doing direct deals and offering not just one ad, but because you can remix that video, just like you have 4 different versions of the first verse of the song, or the intro, or whatever, you can have 4 different versions of that Pepsi ad, or that Burger King ad, or that T-Mobile ad. Plug. You guys can send the stuff to me. So I'm just joking. But yeah, so you can give them more, and also the things that they want to talk about is viewability, and, engagement, CRTs, but when it comes to being able to offer, people skip videos, ads, people skip ads. Our ads are unskippable, and they're also short ads. I think that that's just part of the solution, right? You don't need to do a 30-second ad. You can. But it doesn't take that long to trigger a response, is what I'm saying, right? So I believe short ads, to answer your question, was a roundabout. Short ads, given multiple options, and 100% deliverability to their target market. And also, let's say if we're blessed to do, I'm not going to name an artist, but name brand artists, right? Top tier. We already know what that audience, that demographic looks like. We have deep numbers on it. Everybody, this information is available out there. So when we can go directly to that particular artist group of advertisers who would love to put their product or service rather in front of that music video, that's something that you can't kind of dial into.
Yeah, music is a great proxy for personas, right? It's very easy to figure out who exactly you're targeting.
Exactly. So if you know the fan base of this particular artist, then we can work backwards and reverse engineer that and understand exactly, hey, this is girls from 12 to 16 or 14 to 18 or a demographic is wide, whatever it is. And the tweens, tweens have $1 trillion a year spending budget. You know what I'm saying? They spend, and they don't have jobs. You know what I'm saying? So it's incredible. But that's a highly coveted market. So when you can offer advertisers the ability to guarantee them that people are going to see their ads, it's a good thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, Robbie, when we spoke earlier, you mentioned community as a big focus for Revohloo. How are you guys imagining community unfolding in apps like this? Like, how are online communities changing in the music world?
Well, let me put it like this. I think it's going to be easy, right? We talk about all of our technologies and things of that nature, which are incredibly exciting, right? Absolutely. But for me, I have to say, I'm more excited about the community that we're intending to build, and we know how to do it. It's easy. We're building our community to have the environment and the vibe something that we would want. We base everything on what we would want, right? How would I feel? How would we feel if we went to a platform and they did this, or they offered this, or they had that, right? And it's all like Tracy mentioned earlier, like it's all about the value that it creates, right? So if something doesn't create value on both sides, right? Both sides for us as a business, but also for the people who are coming to our platform, whether they're a creator or maybe there's someone who is just a lover of what someone else has created, right? It needs to create value. And if it doesn't, if we can't say with certainty that it does, we're not going in that direction. You know, and you touched on something earlier, Trista, where you mentioned like, in terms of, you said where children don't understand something, or people don't understand, or creators don't understand how to make a video. That's one of the things that I'm so excited about, and I can't wait for. This is going to be a community where when you come to Revohloo, you're coming with intentionality, right? We do have a social layer to Revohloo, right? We offer a lot of the typical kind of features that most social media platforms offer, because people love those, right? We want to give them that too. But it's really not the place where you're going to come to post the pictures of your lunch, or you're arguing with your other half and you're venting here. You're going to come because either you heard about a new Premiere Revohloo, or you're coming to check out what's hot in music, or maybe you saw a promo of a podcast that we're going to be doing where we're talking about monetization, and we're educating these young artists on what that even means, right? That's like one of the words that's all over the place. People talk about monetization all the time, but what does that truly mean to an artist, and how do you do it, and how do you do it in the way that's going to create the most value for you? Those are the things that, again, that I'm super excited about. And I know I'm not alone in that.
Amazing. So, Tracy and Robbie, you mentioned rights holders and bootstrapping, and those two things don't always go together completely harmoniously, though, of course, that's changing a bit. I'm wondering if you have any advice for other music tech companies out there who are getting started about how to approach licensing and how to think about it, because you guys took it really seriously and really tried to do it right. So tell us a bit about that experience and what you would tell other entrepreneurs coming up.
Well, I would say, because first thing, if you don't know coming into the space, obviously you have to do your research, consult a lawyer. If you go to the library. The information is out there. Chat GTP. You know what I'm saying? But watch out. You could get some, that's not.
Yeah, don't hallucinate your way to a licensing agreement.
But you gotta be careful there. But no, there's resources out there. There's good information. If you're ambitious and smart enough to do that, I would just say, get the information, find out where your service is, how your service is defined, what kind of service you are, and there are rules, and just follow the rules. And be proactive when it comes to just protecting people's rights.
Yeah. How did you find the outside expertise you needed?
Well, myself, I came up with this idea to create these interactive music videos, and I didn't have a background in entertainment. I was an early adopter of the internet, but I didn't have the skill sets to build a streaming service. I didn't really know what it all entailed, but I did have the ambition enough to go out and say, you know what, whatever it is, I can learn. And I basically taught myself. I had to go out there and actually read and discover and what we were actually building. What kind of a digital service provider were we? You know what I'm saying? What are we doing? And it was just the trial and error, discovery, and you can do. I mean, I believe I can do anything. So that's me.
I love it. That's inspirational. So you and this business isn't simple, so it's amazing.
No.
That you dove in and were like, I'm not going to be deterred. I'm going to go and make this thing.
Right. But you know what though, Trisha? I mean, in the music, if anybody in the music business that's listening to this, they will tell you that even the most seasoned music professional can get lost in the weeds when it comes to licensing. It's a
Oh, absolutely.
very,
Oh yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's sticky, right, Robbie? Robbie knows, and Robbie's a good study, and we're studying, and we're, you know what I'm saying, and understanding, but really there are different use cases and this and that and the third, and it gets really, you get lost in, like I said, seasoned professionals that have, 20 years in the industry, it can be a challenge. So, nobody knows everything. I think that one of the things that you touched on, you talked about it, how to refine the resource, or hiring the best people and having the best people around you. Surround yourself with a good team.
That's great advice. All right. Thank you so much for talking to me today about Revohloo and all the exciting things going on in the music industry right now. And I mean, just the amazing story of jumping in and building something. I love it.
Thank you.
Hey, do you have your ticket for the Music Tectonics conference yet? Now is the perfect time to grab one before early bird tickets fly away for good. If you go to musictectonics.com right now, you can get a conference ticket for just $249. On August 15th, the price goes up to $350. That ticket gets you in to 3 days of connecting with the music innovators you need to meet to grow your business and your network. On October 24th, 25th, and 26th, 2023, we're planning a seismic keynote with Mengru Kwok, BandLab CEO, a music tech carnival with innovative demos, high-energy panels with music techs, movers, and shakers, and lots of opportunities for networking and getting business done. It all goes down by the beach at unexpected venues in Santa Monica, California. Don't miss those early bird tickets to the music tech event of the year. Get yours at musictectonics.com. While you're there, check out our growing speaker roster to see who you'll meet at Music Tectonics. See you there.
Thanks for listening to Music Tectonics. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We have new episodes for you every week. Did you know we do free monthly online events that you, our lovely podcast listeners, can join? Find out more at musictectonics.com. And while you're there, look for the latest about our annual conference and sign up for our newsletter to get updates. Everything we do explores the seismic shifts that shake up music and technology, the way the Earth's tectonic plates cause quakes and make mountains. Connect with Music Tectonics on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. That's my favorite platform. Connect with me, Dimitri Vitsa, if you can spell it. We'll be back again next week, if not sooner.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.